Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Nashville, it's time for Nashville Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Nashville Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, I've been looking forward to this one a lot because an important topic, gratitude. Brendan Kamm is with us, folks. Brendan, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure. So let's get right into it. Talk about Thnks and how you help folks out there.
Yeah, so Thnks is, at its core, it's a B2B software platform, and it's a suite of tools that lets you send small gestures of appreciation digitally. And what I mean by that is I could email you a cup of coffee, or I'll text message a client an Uber ride because it's raining out. Hey, skip that commute. Your ride's on me this morning. Maybe it's a bowl of chicken soup because someone's had to miss a meeting because they aren't feeling well. These sort of small gestures that can really strengthen a relationship. And the power in the tool is for someone in sales or customer service or any job that really relies on building relationships, they've got a very simple way, right? It's 2 taps and a message and you send it off. It's all trackable, whether they've accepted it, opened it, whatever it might be. The recipient side, very easy. Again, 1 click, they can accept their item. If they prefer to donate the value to charity, they can do that, create this sort of virtual cycle of good and gratitude. But the power, I think, for the business lies in the tools on the back end, because even just buying someone a cup of coffee in a business setting, there's an expense report to be done. There's a compliance rule for the sender, a compliance rule for the recipient. There's legal, right? There's all these things that go into it. And the net effect of that, at least for me in my career, has always been, well, can I do this? Do I have the money to do this? How do I do this? And so we just take care of all that. And the software takes care of all those things in the back end up front. So anyone in legal or compliance or finance knows, hey, these rules are in place. And anyone who's out there building relationship knows, hey, if I see it in Thnks, I can send it and I can start building my relationships.
Wow. Seems easy enough to me. But before we get into more of the details of the service itself, Brendan, let's talk about why gratitude. I mean, why? I mean, maybe that's an obvious question, but it's not one that we discuss every day in business, do we?
No, it's not. And you think of it as maybe an obvious question, but in the same way, you probably go throughout your day saying thank you to 150 people, but not really thinking about it, right? It's just the words that come out. There's a real power in taking the time to authentically actually be grateful. Mm-hmm. It's funny. There's actually a lot of science behind just for a person personally being grateful. Like lower blood pressure, better sleep, like all these things that come with it. So it's a crazy powerful kind of tool we have in our arsenal. And from a business perspective, I'm often asked about, well, what's the ROI on something like this, right? And it sounds almost trite, but it starts with a smile. Honestly, if you get that person to smile, right? They open that thanks or that thing that you've given them. Hey, I know you're really busy. I thought a little caffeine could go a long way today. And they smile, right? But that smile is what leads to, that next email when you need to ask for something gets opened, that phone call gets answered, that next meeting gets put on the books, right? And so ultimately, we were able to track these things through shorter sales cycles and more deals through a pipeline. But it starts with that first, like, hey, we're 2 humans, right? It doesn't have to be just transactional. Where's my contract? I'm working on it. It's in legal, right? We get through these just rote things and there's just no relationship being built. And I think that's where the power of gratitude comes in. It's a way to really connect with someone who, in a business setting, look, we're not going to be personal friends necessarily, right? I don't know all that much about you, but hey, maybe we were on a Zoom call and your dog ran in the background and I'm going to send you a little makeover for the dog from Petco. That's, it goes a long way for $15. It really does. It's that thoughtfulness that really matters, I think.
So you made me smile with that one. I like that one. Yeah. And what you're talking about, is small gestures go a long way. I mean, a cup of coffee does not seem like much unless it comes unexpectedly like this, right?
Right. That's right. It's the small thing that you weren't expecting, right? And it certainly means a lot to that person who is at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, whatever it might be every day. Recently, as you know, here in Nashville, it's been about 105 degrees every day. So We've been sending out ice cream cones, right? Mm-hmm. It just kind of comes out of the blue and maybe you send it for someone in their family. Again, it's $10, $11. It's never going to be seen as a bribe. It's never going to be seen like I'm trying to, win you over with some lavish thing. It's just, hey, that was a nice thing to do. It's really hot out. And, I have 2 children. So, head to Baskin Robbins this afternoon. And because that cost is low you can do these things frequently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes part of your daily workflow. That's very different than, and this is not meant to take the place of, but that big quarterly dinner you're going to do with the top client, that one prospect you're going to fly across the country to go shake their hand and have that lunch with. You're still going to do those things, but in between, what about the 200 other people you're really meant to be building relationships with? And I think that's really where Thnks comes in.
You're really kind of putting psychological dollars in the bank, right? I mean, with your clients and prospects, you're making a deposit psychologically in that relationship, if you will. Yeah,
I love the way you've put that. There's actually a lot of science behind the psychology of things like gratitude, but also reciprocity. There's a great book. I think it was 1985. Robert Cialdini wrote the sort of seminal book on persuasion and influence. It's actually called Influence. But chapter 2 of that book is all about reciprocity. I think we're probably both of the age to remember the Hare Krishnas in the airports who would hand out the flowers. Yep. And I never quite understood how could there be an ROI on that, if you will. But actually, the book goes into this study of we're just hardwired as humans to want to stay on a level playing field with people. Mm-hmm. And so if I give you something, even if it doesn't really have value to me, I feel like I owe you a little something back. And we're constantly playing these games in our lives with these sort of social aspects. And so I think Thnks definitely taps into a little bit of that psychological power as well. We like to do little favors for each other, and those little favors add up to these sort of, like you said, almost in the bank, until all of a sudden you're like, wow, I have a really nice relationship with that person. Yeah. It's because we both added to our bank with each other.
I love it. Brendan Kamm is with us, folks, with Thnks. That's THNKS.com. So, and we'll get to more of the contact info here as we go along, but, let's talk about, let's just back up here, because I dived into gratitude real quickly, but I'd like to talk about a little bit about the company background, how you got this going. What gave you the idea, Brendan?
So I was at a prior company. I was effectively running their revenue. I had 40 people in sales and customer success who were reporting to me. And this was always a little bit of a pain point. Hey, why don't you stop on the way into work and drop some bagels and coffees off at our client's office, whatever it might be, these sort of little gestures. And it was really hard to get people to do, and hard for me too, right? Everyone's busy. You end up with that wallet with the 30 receipts sticking out of it, and either you eat the costs, you don't have to do the expense report, or you spend 2 hours doing the report. And so it was just really hard to get people to do it. And then, we would do like the swag thing. And so really a lot of this came from, I was with my business partner. We just closed a piece of business, and we were chatting about it. What are we going to send? We always send something nice. This was like a Fortune 500 company. And I said, well, I'm going to send the sweatshirt and the pen and the notebook from our closet over there. And it was just like almost silly. We're sending a sweatshirt in August to this poor woman. But it was the nicest thing we had. It's got our logo on it. This was not like a cool, well-known company, right?
Right.
You're like, well, this isn't really about her then, right? It's about me. I'm like, wear my stuff, play with my logo. And again, there's a marketing time and place for that, but it wasn't what I was looking for, right? I was really looking for something to say thank you. And so we kind of talked about it. And my partner, Larry, he's got a couple decades on me. So he gave me the old man speech of, well, you're on your phone all day. Why don't you just send something from there? And I showed him, I'm like, I can't. I mean, I could send a gift card, but that's impersonal. Mm-hmm. And he's a attorney. So he started thinking about, and there's compliance issues and cash equivalents and all these things that I wouldn't even think about at the time. And so anyway, it was one of those things where it sticks in your brain, right? And you noodle on it. And every day when you're like, man, why aren't we doing this stuff? This should exist. And finally we were like, you know what? It's got to exist. And it really came from that, right? It's especially me being in sales for my whole career. I'm not a particularly slick sales guy. It really just comes down to relationships. I can remember some of my favorite sales reps growing up, even when I was on the buy side, and they were the guys who, knew I was a big New York Knicks fan, or, knew what I was into and would even just talk to me about it. Right. There was that thoughtfulness and human capacity to it. And that's really what we wanted to instill in Thnks and why we started it.
I love it. Now you made a big move. You didn't start in Nashville. You started in New York City and made the move about a year ago. How's that been? Why did you do that, first of all, and how's that been?
Yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. So you're right. We started the business in New York City, right in Midtown Manhattan. We were actually sitting in our lead investor's office. So we had nice office space, shared office space for a few years as we got things off the ground. And we just kind of started to outgrow it. There was other companies there and we were growing pretty fast, and we decided, hey, we need our own space. And I remember the initial conversation, we said we should go south. We could save a few bucks on the square footage for our rent. Now, south to us being Midtown Manhattan meant 14th Street or below, right?
Right.
So it's a little cheaper down there. So that's literally how it started. And then we started talking more, though. And we said, look, Thnks is about a culture was supposed to be so important to us, right? And we're like, well, we have to put that at the forefront. And if we're a company that's about hospitality and gratitude and thoughtfulness, New York's a lot of things, but it's not necessarily those things, right? It's not the first thing you think of with New York City. And so the thinking got to be, well, maybe a little further south makes a little more sense from a cultural standpoint. And then that kind of led us to looking and saying, well, we need to be a few hours of New York, because a lot of our employees ended up coming with us, which was amazing. But they wanted an easy way to get home. I needed to convince my wife and 3 children that this was a good idea. So there was a lot of kind of moving parts there. We threw COVID on top of it, because right in the middle of all that, that's when that all hit last year as we started preparing for this move.
Sure.
So it was a heck of a year to get down here, but I got to tell you, it's been amazing. It's a better business environment for a growing business. The people here are fantastic. The culture is everything we hoped it could be. And honestly, recruiting's been pretty amazing. Not just here, which we knew we'd have, all the great schools in the area, but there's people coming from Atlanta, Chicago, New York, LA. We put a job description up, and people from all over the country raise their hand and say, hey, I'd move there. I'm looking for that type of environment. So it's been a fantastic move for us overall.
Wow, that's fantastic. The Chamber of Commerce loves to hear that. From Brendan Kamm, folks, the CEO of Thnks. So, Brendan, let's talk about, I guess, the question I have is are you able to customize here? Are you, in terms of, you mentioned Starbucks, and that's kind of a common gift, a Starbucks card or a Dunkin' Donuts card, but you mentioned you're a New York Knicks fan. So if I know you're a Knicks fan, can I customize that gift to you, right?
Yeah, for sure. In a few ways, actually. So one thing we did early on was we built this kind of custom API connection with Amazon. Mm-hmm. So it gives you that full Amazon catalog. So in the event I'm looking for something very specific, I can use the search function within Thnks, and I could find, for instance, a old Patrick Ewing jersey, right? And I could send it to my Knicks fan client. But the other thing we can do that's kind of neat is start to sort of bundle items to create things. I had a client actually, prospect from a couple weeks ago, and he was letting me know about big vacation he was going on with a bunch of buddies, big golf vacation. And I ended up bundling together 3 things for him. It was some Titleist Pro V1 golf balls, a bottle of tequila, and then what we call a hangover helper package, which was a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich and a coffee for the morning. So I kind of, again, it didn't even cost me that much, right? But like that thought of, hey, I got you. I know you're going to go play golf. I know you're going to be having some drinks with your buddies. And that next morning is probably not going to be that fun getting on the airport. So in a way, I'm kind of in that person's head, throughout their positive time they're having on their vacation. So there's, again, that psychological element. It's a nice thing to do and a nice gesture. But when you put some thought into it, you realize, hey, I can really associate myself here with something really positive that they're doing, make it even more positive, right? And have them connected to me. And so I think you're right. That customization can be really important. We had someone we helped put together a package where they could send a Weber grill. This is a much bigger item, right? This is not your everyday. Mm-hmm. It's a Weber grill and actually some Porter Road steaks. So from right here in Nashville. And just it was meant to be like a tailgating. They were a big college football fan, right? And I think one of the powers of Thnks was because you don't need a home address. That's not something you're going to send to someone's work. I mean, that's just mean, right? Like some Weber grill shows up at your work. How are you getting that home?
Right.
And so with Thnks, they were able to do it digitally. The person just signed into their Amazon account, was able to, get it to their house without giving in any personal information. So it lets you get really creative, even with things like that you wouldn't normally think of as being possible to do. So it's really, really meant to be customizable. And like, how does this, again, focus on your relationship? It's less about the stuff, right? So we'll get you what you need. We just want to make it really easy for you to send it.
Yeah. And boy, when you're trying to give thanks, when you're trying to show gratitude, showing thoughtfulness, that there's some thought behind the gift is so important, right?
Right. That's right. It's and thought can come in a lot of ways. It can be really specific, like the, the Weber grill and the steaks or the golf balls and the tequila, but we actually see it weirdly in like mass as well. So we've got a kind of a bulk function where you just upload a spreadsheet, right? And you can send to a lot of people. And we actually had a company who wanted to send to 60,000 employees. And obviously logistically that can be a big pain. So we were able to make it really easy. Hey, just give us the list of 60,000 employees. And they ended up just sending them an Amazon movie night. And so it was just hey, it's Friday, rent a movie on us, right? So it was like $4 per person. So it didn't break the bank to be able to send to everyone. But because it was a surprise, because it was just, hey, it's for the weekend, that's a level of thoughtfulness too, right? And it's like, you would never give an employee a $4 spiff because that just feels weird. That's just mean almost. Like, what? Right. But and out of the blue, hey, if you're home tonight, this weekend, and you want to rent a movie with the family, we just thought we'd do that. And the only way you can do that is if you can get it done in a few minutes. You can't spend hours just to send people a $4 movie night. So I love little stories like that, where I think thoughtfulness can come in a lot of different directions and a lot of different flavors.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the example of employees because you're in sales. I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, we both think in terms of sales and prospecting, but employee appreciation, right? I mean, wow, what a great way to use your platform.
Yeah, and what I like about employee appreciation, there's a lot of cool tools for HR teams that are people can earn points or they've got all kinds of reward systems, and I very much think Thnks is very different from rewards. I like in an HR context, the idea of giving managers a small budget. I mean, it could be $20 a month, right? But just saying, hey, do something personal for your team members when they do something good, or just to say thank you, right? So, go back to like a football fan with the NFL starting up, I could send them wings and beer at Buffalo Wild Wings or something like that, right? And it's like, again, it's about that thought and like, hey, this person listens to me, right? I'm a music fan. I'm going to send 3 months of Spotify. And so a little bit different than the sort of reward or earned in or anything like that. It's just, wow, that I was acknowledged, right? And it goes so far for employees. I mean, you can find study after study about the gap even between, I think it's like 90% of CEOs think that they're showing the proper appreciation to employees, and like 36% of employees think they're appreciated. It's a wild stat. Wow. Like, man, there's a gap there. That's got to be fixed.
Yeah, that is painful to listen to for sure. Now, you mentioned swag before, Brendan, and the whole issue of just while it's meant well, sending a gift with my name on it, your name on it, our names on it, our company names on it, feels a little promotional these days, doesn't it?
It does. And look, there's time and place for promotion for sure. I think that's a little more when it's impersonal, right? It's maybe we're at a conference and I'm just going to meet a whole lot of people and I want to just get my brand out there. So it's not that I think swag is necessarily a negative, but I think I see people use it to build relationships, and it's just, that's not it, right? In the worst case, you do the cheap thing and it's the t-shirt that ends up washing a car, or the squeeze ball that ends up in the landfill. We even see this at conferences, right? People get a bag full of stuff and they leave it in the hotel room just because they don't want to bring it on a plane. And that's really sort of the negative side of swag. But even on the positive end, I think it's a marketing tool. It's not so much a relationship building tool. Even within employees, everyone likes a little swag, right? They like to be proud of your company. But on a day-to-day basis, it's not the best way to say thank you, I don't think. I don't think there's an element of gratitude when you're talking about swag. I think it is always going to have a self-promotional element, which again is fine, but I just think very, very different than maybe what you're trying to achieve with something like Thnks.
Brendan Kamm with Thnks, folks. And Thnks is a digital gratitude platform that empowers you to build better relationships. Who doesn't want that? So I'm curious, and I didn't prep you on this, so excuse me for this question. What is the most unique gratitude item that you've run through your platform that someone has come up with? I'm curious about that. So
probably my favorite one, and there's been some really, really fun ones, but I think my favorite one was a kayak. So it was at the time, it was the largest Thnks that ever been sent, and it kind of came out of the blue. And we saw it kind of come through. We ended up contacting the sender, being like, "You just sent a kayak. I mean, it's like a very large item." And it was. He said, "Look, this was a really important deal I've been working on for over a year. This was the guy who helped me get it over the line, made the referral, like saw it through for me. He's a huge outdoorsman. And it was kind of the thing we talked about earlier, where he's like, I wanted to do this. I had no other way that I could have, because I don't have a home address for him. It's not something I'm going to have show up at his office. It's 9 feet long. And so he was able to do it through Thnks, through our sort of integration there. And it went over huge. It was obviously a very unexpected kind of thing. So I think that was probably my overall favorite. It's also got some sentimental value to me because it was pretty early on, and it was kind of by far the largest dollar value Thnks that had ever been sent. And so it always sticks with me as someone who was just being really, really thoughtful and creative in the way they could use the platform. But I've seen all kinds of fun stuff, jokey stuff. I mean, you'd be pretty funny to look through our search terms and see kind of the things people come up with and what they're sending, or even reach out to us and say, hey, can you curate these types of items for us? So I see it across the board, and there's just some great fun stuff in there.
I can see how after a while, you've been at this for a while now, your customers, clients get the benefit of the knowledge you're getting from all these other clients, right? That are coming up with great ideas that you can pass on.
Yeah. And this almost seems commonplace now, but a year and a half ago, around, February, March, things were starting to shut down around the country a little bit. People were a little nervous about how am I going to keep up. Right. And, the idea of a happy hour over Zoom wasn't really a thing, right? It was, I think it's almost become commonplace now, but pretty quickly and pretty early on, we had some clever customers who came up with the idea of, I want to send cocktail kits, not just a bottle of booze, but like a full kit, right? I want them to be able to mix a margarita with me, and we cheers over the video, right? And so we were able to kind of take that and bring it to a lot of our clients, and suddenly that became like a weekly thing they were doing either internally or with certain clients. So I love stuff like that. I think that's the smarts that can go into this, right? The human power. I'm not a big believer in the AI is going to find you the perfect item to send this person. I just think that becomes impersonal and it never quite works. But when you use the sort of power of the human brain in aggregate, we come up with some really kind of fun stuff and programs. And it's business, so it has to have an ROI at the end of the day. But again, because you're talking lower priced items, it's pretty easy to connect it right to your CRM and see exactly the effect it's having.
Yeah, for sure. So Brendan, I would love it if you would share maybe a success story, someone that has come back to you and said, hey, I am a believer in the power of Thnks, your platform.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate we have a lot of them. There's a big benefit, I think, in the world of gratitude here, where people like to associate themselves as well with a brand and a movement around gratitude. So I get a lot of really good feedback. So I'll actually tell you one that maybe will surprise you a little, because the win is less about, I have lots of kind of stories of certainly faster sales cycles. Actually, we've done studies with improved dollar amounts of final sale. Like there's lots of things that can go into it. But one large client we have, it was a logistical time savings play. And then it turned out to have a big ROI for their actual deals. But they have about 500 salespeople around the country in different sort of field offices. And it's a field sales job. So there's a decent amount of turnover in there. And they had tried things like giving people gift cards to give out. These are people who are sort of out on the streets at apartment buildings, talking to managers and things. But those would tend to disappear. People would disappear. And so they just couldn't get a good program in place. And with Thnks, they ended up basically distributing this out. It gives them sort of real-time view into what everyone's doing, but they were also able to set it up so that you have teams under teams under teams. There's this sort of hierarchy function within the software, and they could set budgets accordingly. And probably more importantly for them, because they work in a bit of a regulated industry, they were able to set all those compliance rules so that if the guy in Colorado sent $20 to this company and the guy in Miami sent $100, and suddenly we were over our $100 limit for that company, it could stop it. Right. And they just they were figuring out their compliance rules like a year later, because someone in the back office was going through it and being like, oh, I guess slap on the wrist. Right. So we were able to prevent all of that from happening. And the net result there was, and this was like the coolest thing to me, when they told me there's 2 tools we train our salespeople on when they come on. And it was Microsoft Dynamics, which was their CRM, and it was Thnks. And everything else kind of comes later. And I was like, wow, that's what I would love for everyone in the world. Like,
oh, yeah.
Bringing on Thnks that first time. But it always felt like for a while it was a nice to have tool. And as it started to become a need to have for some of these clients, as they started using it, that's what really let me know we're onto something cool. It really became part of their daily workflow, a requirement for their salespeople or their HR people. And I love those stories where even if it just started as a logistical, hey, this is just an easy thing to do, that kind of grew into that bigger ROI.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. So what does the future look like? I mean, what are your future plans? How do you intend to enhance the platform as time goes on? What's on the horizon here, Brendan?
Yeah, great question. So, one I'll say, in case anyone's listening and looking, we're going to be hiring a lot. We're growing pretty fast, and we're going to need a lot of good folks in the Nashville area who can come join us. So that's going to be an important one. We're growing about 3x year over year right now. So that's happening fast. When you think about the product itself, one thing I'm excited about is actually the idea that maybe one day no one even comes to Thnks. So we've got a mobile app and a web app, and there's all different ways you can use it. But ultimately, it's not about Thnks, the platform, right? It's about the gratitude and instilling that into your workflow. So, we've got add-ons now with Salesforce and LinkedIn and trying to be where the people who use the product are so that, hey, you never even have to come to this tool. It should just be part of your flow. If you're working out of email generally, if you're working out of, a CRM, let's be there and just connect that idea of anytime I'm thinking about these people I want to build a relationship with, Thnks is right there beside me. So we're going to be doing a lot in that respect. Again, just making it as easy and frictionless as possible. We very much look to that like, almost Apple-esque, like it's a white box with one button, right? How do you make this less about the tool and more about the people involved in the relationship? So you're going to see a lot of that from us, always trying to strip back, even our business model, right? We don't have contracts or SaaS long-term commitments or anything like that. Anyone can download it and start using it. That's all in service of this idea that like we want this in the hands of everybody and to be really simple.
Brendan Kamm, CEO of Thnks, folks. Wow, Brendan, this is awesome. What great work you're doing, and goodwill you're spreading and helping spread. So thank you for the terrific work you're doing. But I want to get to the most important question, which I can't imagine that there's some folks that listening to this show don't want to connect with you, get on your website and check it out. So let's give them directions on how to do that.
Yeah. So easiest way for more info, www.thnks.com. That's THNKS. So thanks without the A. I can always be reached directly. Please, honestly, feel free to reach out to me. It's bkamm@thnks.com. So it's BKAMM@thnks.com. And then if you just feel like checking out the tool, there's mobile apps you can download in the App Store, whether it's Android or iOS. And right from the website, you can find the platform itself. Like I said, free to join and easy to use. So go ahead and check it out. And if you need any more info, don't hesitate to contact us.
Brendan Kamm with Thnks. Brendan, thanks. I may have to send you a little piece of gratitude myself for coming on the show. So thank you so much.
I had a great time. I appreciate it, John Ray. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure. And thanks for your great work. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder. You can find our show, Nashville Business Radio, on all the major podcast platforms. Search terms is pretty easy, Nashville Business Radio. If you'll find the show and subscribe, we would love that. And if you're using a podcast app that enables you to give us a review, please do that. And it's not about, and I'm asking for a 5-star review, by the way. I go for the big numbers. And folks, it's not about me, and it's not about Business RadioX. It's about our great guests. And you've heard the great work Brendan does, and we've had a number of great guests on our show, and more coming. That deserve to be found and celebrated. And you supporting the show in that way helps us do that. So if you could do that for us, we would appreciate it. So for my guest, Brendan Kamm with Thnks, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on Nashville Business Radio. We are clear. Awesome. Cool. Brendan, thank you. That's awesome.
I appreciate you having me on. That was That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So, here's what'll happen from here. We'll probably publish the show tomorrow.
Okay.
When we do, you'll get an email from me that says your interview's been published, and you'll have a link back to the show page. One of the things you're able to, obviously that link is there for you to use, but we don't ever take anything down. So after 15 years, we got 50,000 interviews, so it's never coming down. But it'll always be there to do some silent work for you, hopefully. But the other thing is on that show page, on the player itself, there's a share button where you can get the embed code.
Got it.
And you can embed the player wherever you like, blog post or on your site or something, so people don't have to leave your site to listen to the interview. So that's kind of a cool thing. Yeah. And and one of the things too is Stone and I we're probably going to be doing what we call Radio Day, which is kind of we do radio days as a lead up to having a physical location. And we'll let you know when we're going to be there to do that. And maybe you can come by and see us in person and do an interview in person. So,
yeah, I'd love that.
Okay. We'll let you know.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Well, we'll get to work and get this out and let you know when we do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Brendan. Take care.
Right.
Okay. Bye-bye.